Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So today is Wednesday, September 26th, 2018, and we're going to go through the new polls from today. Pretty much all of them favor the Democrats except for one district over in California. But for right now, we see a lot of good polls for the Democrats. So on your screen right now, there are Thursday polls. I will cover them tomorrow. But right now, we're going to look just purely at the Wednesday polls. So we start off in the state of Ohio, the Senate race and then the governor race. Both taken by NBC News, and this is the same exact poll. So the same people who voted Brown plus 13 also voted a tie in the Ohio governor race. Definitely a difference there. So Brown's popularity is pretty much showing. This is a race that the Republicans thought they could have taken back in 2017. Pretty much gave up after the primaries, and for good reason. Brown is pretty much consistently led by double digits in almost every single poll that was taken in the state of Ohio. That is phenomenal for a Democrat to win in a state that Donald Trump won nearing 10% back in 2016. The fact that a incumbent Democrat who isn't as popular as other people should be in the state of Ohio in terms of their re-election bids, he's doing very well in terms of these numbers. Ohio Senate race probably going to go for the Democrats by this double-digit lead. I mean, Jim Renossi, we're probably not going to see gain a number of voters anytime soon because the Ohio governor race definitely is a lot closer than the Senate race, and for good reason. The Ohio governor race currently held by the GOP John Kasich, very popular. I mean, very, very popular. But right now there's a tie between Mike DeWine and Richard Cordray, and that may seem pretty surprising in a pretty Republican state from 2016, but if we go in the race, it's actually a little bit less of a vote for the Democrats. The overall average is Cordray plus 3.0. Quinnipiac poll shows Cordray plus 2, and then Suffolk shows Cordray plus 7, but overall, the numbers do favor the Democratic Party, but Mike DeWine definitely could come back. Now, Mike DeWine is a senator from the state of Ohio. He was a United States senator. I believe he was in another elected position, but for some reason, Ohio loves to re-elect the same people that were in certain positions before. Whether that's just coincidence or it's exactly like what's happening in Hawaii. Very interesting to see the same names repeated, whether it's for a Senate race or governor race or anything else, or House race, whatever. Typically, some of these typical names are up there multiple times, and ballot after ballot, somehow they end up on there. So the Ohio governor race definitely a lot closer than the Senate race. Right now, I would say that this race is still leaning in the favor of the Democratic Party. They are doing pretty well in that state in terms of fundraising and also garnering support for a party that currently isn't the incumbent in Ohio, didn't win in 2016. And the only thing they have going for them is probably the Senate race. And the Senate race isn't too contested, so it's not like it's driving out any minorities or Democratic voters that are like, yes, I need to vote because this race is close. That's not what's happening. This race is pretty much solid for the Democrats in the state of Ohio. For the Senate race, pretty surprisingly, but the governor race, not so much. So I do think the Ohio governor race definitely could narrow down like it is now, but still. Very interesting to see the numbers with the same poll, Brown plus 13, and then a tie in the governor race. For the Florida governor race, Quinnipiac coming out with a poll, Gillum plus 9. That is phenomenal. Having a Democrat lead by 9% in a swing state like Florida, over 50%, 54 to 45, leaving 1% of undecided voters, those numbers are very good for the Democrats. Leading by that amount definitely does help them. And when we look in terms of the overall average, right now, we look at it, Gillum leads by 4.5%. This is still rated as a toss-up race, but still, all the polls, except for the ones taken before the primaries, show Andrew Gillum ahead. The most recent one showing the Republican candidate ahead was taken back in July, early July, to be exact. But looking at these numbers, very good news for the Democrats here in the state of Florida. So a plus 9 lead is a phenomenal lead for the Democrats in Florida. Now, we pretty much covered the Florida governor race. That one was already characterized as a pretty Democratic governor race compared to the Senate race in the state of Florida. But for right now, very interesting to see somewhere where Rick Scott is very popular. I mean, 18% of voters in Florida approve of him more than they disapprove of him. So it definitely does help for Republicans in any type of election bid in the state of Florida. But I would say that Andrew Gillum is doing very well, especially for a progressive in the state of Florida. Now we can move over to the California 45th District race. Right now, Porter is leading by 5%. Again, this is a New York Times poll. I believe Walters may be the incumbent, or it's an open seat. Probably an open seat because this is the state of California. But actually, no. Okay, so Walters is the incumbent. Right now behind by 5%. I feel like I've seen the name Katie Porter before. Just don't know where. Maybe it was from the New York Times page when I checked it a couple days ago. But right now, the Democrat leads by 5% in yet another district in the state of California that is expected to flip by the end of 2018. So California definitely a prime target for Democrats. I mean, it's stereotyped as a pretty Democratic state, but you'd be surprised with the number of districts that went for Hillary Clinton and also for the GOP incumbent, or also a number of these GOP incumbents that won by 1 to 5%. Whereas in other races, like in my home state of Maryland, all these incumbents win by double-digit leads. Seeing these narrow House races definitely takes you back a bit to areas around like in 1992 when most House races were decided between that margin, because it really did come down to the candidates and not voted across party lines. But that's something we could see in 2018 with helping the Democrats in terms of them gaining voters. In the Pennsylvania 7th District, this is a race, I believe, not Stein. I don't necessarily recognize the name 100%. Could be incumbent, could be not, could not be. This is probably, yeah, it is an open race. Right now, the Democrat leading by 2% in the poll taken before this one, and then the most recent poll shows them leading by 8%. So definitely good numbers for the Democrats there. Can't really expect anything different because it says Pennsylvania and redistricting did occur. Definitely a closer race than people probably would have in other safe races. But for right now, looking at Pennsylvania 7th, definitely a close race, but in the favor of the Democrats pretty solidly. In the Minnesota 2nd District, this is a race currently with a Republican incumbent. Craig leads by 3%. So those numbers are not good for the GOP there. Being behind in a House race, just like the GOP candidate is in California, it definitely doesn't spell out good news, especially when this race is not just this particular race, but overall the 2018 House races are going to be characterized in favor of the Democratic Party because this is a Democratic wave year. Being behind in polling now definitely doesn't help your campaign, mainly because you're already an incumbent. You're known, meaning those undecided voters are voters who already know you. They're not saying, oh, we just don't know who they are. We just don't know their policies yet. They know your policies. They just won't vote for you, or they're just too undecided at this point. And in a state like Minnesota, the 2nd District may not be the most Democratic district, but it's also a race to watch there. Now for the California 21st District, this is a race currently held. Let's see. I believe this is the incumbent. I mean, 11% lead for an open seat would be phenomenal for the GOP there. It'd still be pretty good in terms of, yeah, so he is the incumbent. David Valadao, if I'm not mistaken. This one is currently a lean GOP seat, so it's not like it's too contested, but still, an 11-point lead is very good for a GOP candidate there. That's pretty much the only silver lining there for the GOP candidates in the state of California. But we can move over to the President Trump job approval rating. As usual, Rasmussen has the lowest disapproval rating of the president out of the bunch. But in terms of overall net, spread, like you see here on the Real Clear Politics page. But NPR shows Trump with a 44% approval rating, and then Economist shows a 44% approval rating. Then Reuters shows a 40, or is it Reuters? Shows a 45% approval rating of the president, and then Rasmussen Report shows a 47% approval rating of the president. Pretty much the disapproval rating hasn't really fluctuated that much. Overall, general disapproval is 5, disapproval is 4, disapproval is 8, disapproval is 9. Not a lot to see there, just overall. The president isn't too approved nationwide. We can move over into the 2018 generic congressional vote, essentially just asking people, would you vote for a Democrat or Republican in terms of the ballot? If we go here, I think that the average may still be in the 7-point range. It may have gone up to the 8-point range. I think with this 3 poll that will keep it in the 7-point range. But it's always interesting to see how these fluctuate, but they haven't really changed much. No, I don't want to translate the page. But when we look at it, again, the Democrats are at a very high standpoint. They have leveled off, I guess you could say, around the same amount. The Republicans have gone up because, keep in mind, at this point, we're at 48.6. The highest point for the Democrats was at 49.1 when they led by 13. The Republicans were at 36.1, and now they're at 40.9. So definitely they did gain voters, especially after these primaries. But in terms of the generic congressional vote, it definitely does not look good for Democrats nationwide. Sorry, for the GOP members of Congress and just Republicans nationwide, because Democrats have consistently led. I mean, there's not a single poll that shows the Republicans ahead on Real Clear Politics, whereas in 2010, the Democrats led in the beginning by considerable amounts, I mean by double digits. And then in 2014, the Democrats led by narrow margins, but still were able to lead. There was not a single time where the Republicans did lead in the generic congressional vote in terms of the average, or even in a single poll. The closest I think the races was a tie between the two. Now, we can go over to the congressional job approval rating. Pretty much nothing really to see here. It's always around the same. Approved 12, approved 22. Doesn't really matter. These people still get reelected regardless. And then the direction of the country. Again, that doesn't really have that much in terms of implications for the president or the United States, because I do feel like a number of these Trump voters that disapproved of the Obama legacy came back in terms of the right direction or on track poll, because they have changed since Trump's election, but the approval ratings haven't. So it's always interesting to see these results in terms of the wrong track or right direction. It's always very, very cool to see the majority of the country think we're going in the right direction more than they approve of the president, because that's not really what we had before. If we go all the way back, I don't know if it did load. If we go all the way back, I mean, when Obama was first elected president, or I guess you could say when they first started taking polls, he started off with, let's see if we can get it there, wrong track, plus 46.2. There was a point in time after Obama was getting elected, I mean, right during his presidency, after these, just leading into it, we were at a point where we did have a right direction plus 0. So not really in the lead, but very, very, very close time. And then we went to a point where Obama was at, okay, wrong track 55, and then it went down again. I believe this was after his reelection or around his reelection, and then it went all the way back up to wrong track 56. And then I believe around when Trump gets elected, let's see if we can find it, it dips down. I mean, dips down closing in to his first steps of his administration. Definitely does narrow down from the Obama legacy. I mean, Trump is at a point where he is at the lowest of pretty much any Obama era time. There were certain pockets where Obama did do well in terms of the direction of the country, but Trump has been pretty low. So that's always surprising, but the approval rating polls aren't really correlating with what we're seeing here. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.